So in our first Enviroscape video, we demonstrated here on our watershed model some point source and non-point source pollution examples. And if you recall, non-point source pollution it's a broad spectrum of things that is causing pollution that is not easy to identify. And non-point source pollution generates over half of our water pollution. Yet there are hardly any regulations through the government like there are for point source pollution. So most non-point source pollution prevention methods are done voluntarily. Voluntary pollution prevention practices are commonly referred to as BMPs, which stands for Best Management Practices. So systems, activities, and structures that people voluntarily do to prevent or reduce non-point source pollution are called BMPs, Best Management Practices. And we are going to demonstrate some of those BMPs today here back on our Enviroscape. So if you remember in our first video here on the farm, we had this farmer here who would till up the ground after harvesting his crops, and that loose soil would wash right into the watershed, right? He also over-applied his fertilizer.
He was spraying it. He was spraying the field. It was a sprayer.
The sprayer, yeah. And then also here on the pasture, the animals were getting, their poop was getting in the creek, right?
Poop?
The manure, the animal poop. So there are a lot of BMPs that farmers can do. And we are going to demonstrate a couple of them today. One of the things is contour planting. So if you notice, he is planting his rows this way. And when you plant rows that way, the water is going to flow right along there, right? And it's going downhill. So this water is going to flow off his farm and take all kinds of stuff with it. Too much soil, phosphorus, nitrogen, and it's going to get in the water. So what he can do is called contour planting.
Or we can just plant the other way.
Right. You're right.
Or like this.
Yep, he's going to plant that way now. So position his tractor this way to represent contour planting. Good job. That's easy, right? So the next thing that he can do is either install filter strips or a wetland to put a buffer here between his farm and the water surface. So we're going to construct that with some sponges and Play-Doh.
If the water goes under the sponge, the Play-Doh will catch it.
You're right. So wetlands act like a sponge because they absorb the water and slow it down and collect all the pollutants before it goes into the water source. So our sponge here kind of represents a wetland, and then we have a filter strip here that some Play-Doh. Okay. Also, remember on our farm, the pasture over here, so we're going to build a fence along here to keep the animals out of the creek. Jacob's going to do that with some more Play-Doh. So Jacob has made a fence here to keep our animals out of the creek. Some other practices that farmers can do, they can practice no-till planting. So after they harvest, they don't till up the ground. So there's not any loose soil here to be washed away. Also, they can plant cover crops throughout the winter. So we're going to plant some cover crops on this farm. So we're going to take these little sponges, Jacob, get them a little wet so they kind of stick to the farm. Can you spread those out? Some farmers plant cover crops throughout their whole farm. Some of them just plant them in their waterways to help prevent erosion. This farmer has also tested his soil, so he knows he doesn't need to apply quite as much fertilizer as he has in the past. So Jacob, take your fertilizer and just sprinkle a little bit on the field. Not as much as we did last time.
Okay.
All over, even on the sponges, on the cover crops. Okay, that's good. But even when you do all these practices, some soil might still be loose in the field. So go ahead and sprinkle a little bit of loose soil on top of the field as well. little bit more over here. Okay, good job. And then we have our animals who are always going to make manure no matter what, right?
Yeah.
So put a little bit of sewage right here by the animals on the grass. Good job. All right, now let's make it rain and see if our BMPs work on the farm. Good job. Now, does our water look as polluted as it did last time?
No.
Yeah. Do you think our BMPs worked?
Well, yeah, but they didn't stop it like all the way.
No, they didn't stop it all the way. This is to help reduce non-point source pollution. It's not always going to be 100%.
Let me let that in.
But look, yeah, see, our wetlands and filter strips slowed this water down, and the wetlands will absorb all those bad things, the pollutants that we don't want in our water. Sure. And our cover crops have absorbed the fertilizer and loose soil up on the field.
And now it's all wet, so it should be growing.
The next thing we're going to demonstrate is, remember here on our roadways where they never planted grass? Well, we're going to plant some grass today and see if that can help reduce our erosion. Okay, so Jacob has planted some grass along our side ditches, and you could also use rocks and trees and any kind of plants, vegetation, to help keep that soil there. So go ahead, Jacob, and sprinkle some soil over here on our side ditches. If you remember, on our roadways we had a lot of trash too, and planting vegetation along the roadway will help keep the trash from entering the water too. So put some trash here on the road where people have thrown it out of their vehicles, which we do not want to do, right?
No.
Okay, Jacob, make it rain on our section of the road here. So Jacob did our grass waterways absorb the soil and pollutants. Kind of didn't prevent our trash from going in. Oh yeah, look, it caught our trash there. Prevented it from going into our lake.
The road piece caught one piece. And the hill bus caught that.
Yeah, hills and rocks and things like that can also be good buffers. We have our job site, construction site, where they're moving dirt. So if you remember, all this loose dirt up here was causing some major pollution. What the construction sites can do, they can use straw bales or silt fencing around the job site to help prevent the soil from leaving the job site.
What?
Put the silt fence around. So we've put up our silt fencing. Now Jacob, sprinkle some loose dirt on the brown part here. Good job. Now make it rain on our job site. Or are our silt fences stopping that soil from leaving?
Where?
The green sponges, are they preventing that brown dirt from leaving the job site? No? Well, maybe we didn't make our silt fences right. Another thing to do is to make sure, once the job is done, to plant some permanent vegetation everywhere so that soil doesn't wash away. Next, we're going to do our neighborhood of houses. Some BMPs that you can do for your house is fertilize very sparingly, do soil testing to know when and how much to fertilize properly. Don't fertilize on saturated ground and not right before it rains. You can leave your grass clippings in your yard. That helps return nutrients to your soil.
And you can't fertilize when it's windy because it doesn't blow the fertilize away.
Right. Don't spray fertilize when it's windy. Keep your grass tall, and also plant native landscaping. Native plants have bigger, deeper roots and are more likely to last in our area and also use less water and maintenance. Next, we are going to look at a factory parking lot. So parking lots for businesses, factories, anything that's a lot of hard concrete. That concrete is not porous, so water is not going to flow down in the ground like it will in a golf course. And then there's also cars sitting around. So I don't know if you remember our first video, we had leaky oil cars just like that. Now if you plant a rain garden at the edge of your business parking lot, that should help absorb any kind of pollutants from leaving the parking lot. So the sponge represents a rain garden. The rain garden are plants that sit in a low area and collect and absorb all the pollutants. Remember our forest where someone came in and took all the trees down? Some BMPs for forests. You can make sure the surrounding area is heavy with vegetation. Cut logs selectively, so only take so many out, not all of them. And place straw and silt fencing around your cuttings to help prevent soil runoff. Well, I hope you enjoyed our video about BMPs. And I know it seems like all the BMPs that we talked about today are for big production farmers or foresters or factories, construction sites, and you're thinking that doesn't really pertain to me a whole lot. What can I do? So at home, you can pick up your pet wastes so their manure doesn't flow into your waterways. You can properly collect oil and grease, so don't change your car's oil in your driveway and just let it run on the ground, because that will eventually make its way into our waters. Don't waste water, so be conservative in your water usage. And also don't pour anything down a storm drain. So if you live in town and have a storm drain nearby, those storm drains go straight to the creek. They are not filtered through sewage treatment systems. Only rain goes down the drain.